Welcome, first of all. We have Jessie Barr, who is a sport performance psychologist with the Institute of Sport. Caroline is our health promotion officer with DCU Healthy. Then we have Nadia. She's a sports scholarship athlete here in DCU, looking to qualify for Olympics amongst other things next year. And then we have, last but surely not least, Jack Manning, who's our club chairperson. We'll all be inputting as the afternoon goes on.
Dealing with this uncertainty and that lack of control. That was kind of the big thing that I was taught I did work on, was kind of recognizing some coping strategies we can kind of implement.
Biggest challenges during the lockdown time. Loneliness, uncertainty and motivation seem to be the biggest.
It's interesting that, I say it's interesting, it's not interesting that loneliness came up, but I think what's great is that people are willing to kind of admit that. When we talk about controllables, it's an uncontrollable thing that where you usually socialize has now been removed. So I suppose it's looking at strategies that are in your control to combat that. The amount of athletes when I was speaking to who were kind of saying, I just feel like no one else is finding this hard. You know, people are on Instagram and they're doing this, that, and the other, using that social support that you have, you know, picking up your phone and ringing maybe one of your training group or actually talking. So going beyond just the usual Zoom call and kind of asking, you know, how are you actually finding this? Because I think a lot of people were feeling the same.
There was a piece of research done in DCU on responding to COVID-19 and how we've been doing. Loneliness was kind of the number one theme. And I was actually thinking of, I guess, student athletes and thinking, you know, you're not different to other young people in this, you know, in what you're going to experience.
A lot of what's coming up in this research is what were the biggest challenges, and one of them was separation from their training group. If you look at the strategies for that, is actually share how you're feeling with people. Sometimes just picking up the phone and using the screen to actually reach out and seeing how you actually are feeling. I think this is one of the biggest things I'm asked about is, you know, strategies for motivation. It might feel like at the moment during this lockdown, control has been taken from us. That internal circle there is all the things that we can control. The circle of influence are those things that you don't have full control over, but you may be able to influence. And then the furthest outside is all the things you can't control. And because you can't control them, you need to learn to just accept that you can't control them. And then how can I adapt? How you've adapted your training, how you've adapted college, how you've adapted living. If we start on that outside circle, how many times have you turned up to a race or a competition day and felt nervous because it's been really windy and raining and you go, oh my God, I can't compete today. Can't do anything about it. So why focus on it? You know, all the restrictions, they're out of our control, but we're learning to accept. And I think accepting is a really important word there. We're going to come out the other end of it at some stage. So how can I learn to adapt? And then moving into that internal circle, the middle circle is those things we can influence. You might notice I've put emotions in there and you're probably thinking, but emotions, are they not in my control? You can't control the initial emotional response. It's how you decide to then act on that. In the same way with things, all those things related to other people. You can't control what other people do, but maybe people close to you might have some effect over maybe their motivation. What you probably notice is the controllable list is the longest one there. Our phone time, sleep, nutrition, training. A lot of the things that people are finding the most challenging were actually things in our control.
You talked about the definition of success. Would you have any advice on how to find someone's definition of success?
It just comes back to communication. Ask the person, never make an assumption. Don't put expectations on someone until you know what their thoughts are. A lot of those things are choices. Nutrition, we choose what we decide to eat. We choose what we decide to have in the house. If I don't want to eat something, I just don't buy it. So just remove that temptation by having it in the house. If it's that hard, remove the app from your phone if you're trying to study and you keep getting distracted. The first thing to start with is becoming self-aware. What is leading to a negative mindset? Is it something that someone says, something that happens? Maybe you're feeling unproductive and you're procrastinating and that puts you in a negative mindset. Start recognizing what those triggers are. At the end of the day, the only person who can change that mindset is you, and every single person where a negative mindset will come from will be different. Some people could be because of loneliness. Some people could be because they're out of routine. In those situations, when you're in a negative mindset, what are you saying to yourself? We all have that internal dialogue. We're always talking to ourselves. What has made me get to this stage where I'm in this really negative mindset? And there's probably a trigger that then led to probably a negative thought pattern. One way to kind of combat this is to imagine you're saying those things out loud to someone else. Imagine saying the things I'm saying to myself right now and berating myself and telling myself that, you're not motivated, you're not a good athlete, you're useless. How are you ever going to regain all that fitness after all the training you've not been doing? Would you ever say that to someone who said those things to you? So imagine your friend or one of your best friends in your training group came to you and was like, just feeling so unmotivated. I'm hating lockdown. I'm just so unproductive. I'm not doing my training. You would never say what you probably would say to yourself in that situation, which is, yeah, you're so lazy, you're useless. You're obviously a bad athlete if you're not motivated because look at everyone else. You'd never say that to your friend. You'd probably tell them, look, difficult situation we're in. This is a pandemic. You need to go easy on yourself, have a bit more self-compassion. So maybe when it comes to that negative mindset, start becoming aware of not only what's causing it, but what you're saying to yourself in that situation. And I think that's self-talk is a really, really key thing in those situations.
One of the things that's a really good tool as well for those things is like being mindful and mindfulness. If we just say, okay, I feel this way, what could I do to support myself? The feeling will always move and change. I do think there's a maturity that comes with you guys, being athletes and being disciplined. There's an amazing team of counsellors in DCU, Student Advice Centre. It doesn't have to be a crisis situation, but you can absolutely reach out. And I think DCU is amazing for that.
If you've never done mindfulness or you've never done yoga, you'd be surprised with yourselves how some of you will pick up on it. It can very much help people in a race context. People can be very nervous and get anxious there. And if you're mindful of living in the moment and just going, all the hard work is done now, there's no point being anxious and nervous. You have control of that because you have the training done. But being mindful can be a very powerful tool in your toolbox of I suppose, psychological aids.
I kind of took it 1 month at a time. Maybe the first month I was like, right, this is a chance for me to kind of fix any injuries I had. So I focused on that. The next month, things were kind of looking like they were taking longer. So that month, maybe I worked more on just thinking ahead to 2021. Then I got to summer and suddenly there was races and I had to kind of work on readjusting my mindset to the fact that I actually did have competition when I'd completely switched off from that type of mindset. So yeah, it's ongoing. So that's what I'd kind of give the advice for everyone.
Positives are opportunities like work training balance, catching up on work, identifying weaknesses, focus are the big ones there, time with family. Some people got an opportunity to get their fitness back.
There's a lot of similar, but there's a lot of difference. So what you could take from that is people got a lot out of the lockdown, as much as compared to the first one where there was a lot of the same negatives. Actually, a lot of people took a lot of different positives. When everyone was forced home, no one was in college, very few people were in work. You were kind of given a bit of a gift of time. So it's great that some of you have recognized that.
I'd say initially it was actually just enjoying training because I just came off indoor season and I put a lot of pressure on myself on indoor season and I hadn't really went how I wanted it to, and I was really, really frustrated. In March and April, it was really the best part of my day was going out training. I kind of used it as a year just to race without putting pressure on myself. I just kind of wanted to learn how to race better and get used to traveling and get used to time on my own and hotel room. Being in my own company really helps that, and I think that's a big skill I've taken from this year. It definitely was something I could do this year, and I guess like everyone, once we finally had races, we tried to enjoy them a little bit more.
You sound like you're quite compassionate towards yourself, which is really important in the sense that you said you put less pressure on yourself.
A lot of these talks about COVID and a lot of these talk about the pandemic and how it's affected us is always the focus on the negative. And I think it's really important in this situation to recognize it wasn't all bad. This year has made us realize that how motivated we are by something external, which is a goal, which is a race, which is something that's coming up this year. And this year has scrapped anything external. So that motivation had to come internally. When people tell me how demotivated they are, I say, it's kind of recognizing that, stop waiting for the motivation to come back. Just get started. You feel, I'm not really feeling that motivated for training today. I might leave it later. I might feel a bit more up for it later once I've done this, that, and the other. Chances are you're not going to get that motivation. I'm probably not going to see the benefits of this horrible winter session now, but I know in the summer when I'm racing or I'm throwing that shot put and I'm setting PBs, that's why I'm doing it. I think when it comes to motivation, there's no easy fix. It's setting those internal goals, track that progress, and make yourself accountable to those goals. Write them down, tell someone else, because when you have no external goal to strive towards, it's very easy to kind of get lost. So set those personal goals. I think it is something that's probably in the back of your head is I'm demotivated and I don't know what to do about it. It's just sometimes it is just as simple as getting started and focusing on what I can do, those controllables again.
We're trying to make DC a healthier place for you to be. And so it's about trying to create that in the system. Being a student, it is an opportunity for you guys to change and to lay down some kind of lifelong behaviours. So I think you guys have an advantage in that your athletes, so you're already physically active. There was a study done that's suggesting that behavioural choices maintained during university may track into adulthood and influence long-term health outcomes. Counselling is there and they're still operating, and it's free. These are just some other supports. And I know these are like being thrown around, but they're really important. There's a new text, a national text number 50808. So you can text about anything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was something that was set up through the pandemic. There's Samaritans, PA to House. Yourmentalhealth.ie has got amazing information. So just from reading or general knowledge, really good stuff there. LGBT helpline, and then Dublin rape crisis. And here's some applications for mental health and wellbeing. Again, they're kind of focused around mindfulness and meditation. Headspace, I think, has been rated as one of the top apps. Calm.com, Smiling Mind. Worry Time is actually somewhere where you put in your worry. So it'd be, maybe if you're getting distracted, you could put in that worry and think about it later. Attitudes of gratitude. So we know gratitude makes us feel better. And then Pacifica and Good News Network.
Smiling Mind is one I would use a lot with athletes, because there's actually a whole section that's to sport. So it's really, really good, and it's all free.
Spunet.ie is an amazing website for young people in Ireland, so definitely go on there. I found studentspace.org today, and they just have really good stuff around being a student through the pandemic. They have things about making friends, relationships, so really, really good place to be. And then just to maybe follow us as well.
Do feel like you can reach out to any of us at any stage, but also your peers. I think that's very important, that, you know, don't feel like you can't talk to someone who's in your training group or even in the DCU community, the DCU athletics community. We're a tight, close-knit group of people all trying to achieve similar goals in our sport. And in the university, obviously Caroline has laid out, there's some really good supports there. So don't be shy.